The rain fell in silver sheets, drenching the world in a cold, relentless rhythm. Aubrey Lane tightened her grip around the worn books pressed against her chest, her boots splashing through puddles as she weaved through the crowded streets of Manhattan. The city, alive and impatient, barely noticed the small figure racing against the storm, desperate to reach shelter before her treasured novels were ruined. Her heart pounded, not just from the run, but from the overwhelming weight of life. Rent overdue, dreams slipping further out of reach, and the gnawing loneliness she refused to acknowledge. Lost in thought, Aubrey barely noticed the figure moving against the flow of the crowd until it was too late. The impact sent her stumbling back, the books flying from her arms and scattering like leaves across the wet sidewalk. A sharp gasp escaped her lips as she dropped to her knees, scrambling to gather her soaked belongings. But before her trembling hands could reach them, a large, steady hand appeared, lifting a tattered novel from the ground with a gentleness that felt almost out of place in the chaos of the city. "I'm so sorry," she began, but her words caught in her throat the moment she looked up. There he was, tall, broad-shouldered, his black hair slicked from the rain, and eyes, God, those eyes, an impossible shade of blue that seemed almost luminous under the gray sky. His tailored charcoal coat clung to his strong frame, and even soaked, he radiated a kind of effortless power. Aubrey's heart thudded wildly in her chest, not just from the collision, but from pure, stunned recognition. Logan Whitmore, the billionaire tech mogul. The man whose face graced magazine covers and whose name made headlines for breaking records, and occasionally hearts. She had seen him before, from afar in magazines, always perfectly poised, always slightly unreachable. But here up close, he was devastatingly real. Logan studied her for a beat longer than necessary, his gaze lingering on her flushed cheeks, her damp golden blonde hair clinging to her face, the sparkle of vulnerability and strength flickering in her wide hazel eyes. "You okay?" His voice was low, smooth, and strangely concerned. Aubrey blinked rapidly, forcing her scattered thoughts into order. Yes, I'm fine," she stammered, pushing wet hair behind her ear, mortified by the tremor in her voice. "You sure?" "That was quite a hit," Logan said with a small, crooked smile, handing her the last of her books. His fingers brushed against hers, and the brief contact sent a jolt through her like static electricity. I'm good. Thank you," Aubrey said, her voice firmer this time. For a moment, neither of them moved. The city roared around them, honking taxis, shouting vendors, the hiss of tires on wet pavement. But it all seemed to fade, leaving just the two of them suspended in a strange, shimmering bubble. Logan tilted his head slightly, his smile deepening. "You know," he said almost casually, "I was about to grab a coffee. Would you?" The offer hung between them, improbable and reckless. Aubrey's mind raced. Every sensible cell in her body screamed that this was absurd, that men like Logan Whitmore didn't invite strangers for coffee, that this had to be some bizarre mistake. And yet, looking into those earnest, stormy eyes, she found herself nodding. "Sure, I could use a coffee," she heard herself say, as if someone else had spoken the words. Logan's face lit up with a boyish excitement that momentarily erased the layers of billionaire polish. "Great. There's a place just around the corner, if you don't mind getting a little more drenched." Aubrey laughed, the sound awkward and musical. "At this point, what's a little more rain?" They walked side by side, a strange energy crackling between them, their steps unconsciously matching. As they rounded the corner, Logan glanced down at her, his expression thoughtful. "I'm Logan," he said, as if she didn't already know. But there was a surprising humility in the way he said it, as if he were introducing himself as an ordinary man, not a headline. "Aubrey," she replied, managing a shy smile. "Aubrey Lane." "Beautiful name," he said sincerely, and the way he said it, soft, almost reverent, made her chest tighten. The coffee shop was a small, cozy hole in the wall, its windows fogged with warmth. As they ducked inside, shedding rain and tension, Aubrey felt a strange, thrilling sense that she had stepped not just into a cafe, but into another life entirely. They ordered black coffee for him, chai latte for her, and found a quiet corner. Logan listened intently as Aubrey nervously spoke about her love for books, her dream of one day owning a small bookstore that smelled of old paper and hope. He didn't interrupt, didn't check his phone, didn't let his gaze wander. Instead, he leaned in, as if each word she spoke mattered. No one had ever looked at her like that before. In return, he told her of his own restless beginnings, raised by a single mother, a kid with nothing but a computer and a stubborn dream. He spoke of success, yes, but also of loss and fear and loneliness that billions of dollars could never quite erase. By the time the cups were empty and the rain had softened to a mist outside, Aubrey realized something terrifying and wonderful. She wasn't just talking to a billionaire. She was seeing the man underneath the fortune. And he somehow was seeing her, the girl who had nothing but battered books and a fragile hope she still clung to. As they stepped back into the city, Logan hesitated. "Would you like to do this again sometime?" he asked, the slightest uncertainty threading through his voice. Aubrey's heart somersaulted. Was this real? "I'd like that," she said softly, surprising even herself. Logan's smile was slow and dazzling. "Good. It's a date, Aubrey Lane." And just like that, beneath the misty twilight of New York, two lives entwined. Not with a grand gesture, but with a collision, a cup of coffee, and a choice neither of them would ever regret. Fate, it seemed, had a wicked sense of humor. And it had only just begun. The first time Aubrey Lane boarded Logan Whitmore's private jet, she nearly turned and ran. Everything about it screamed a life she didn't belong to. The gleaming marble floors, the polished wood accents, the white leather seats so soft they looked like clouds. A flight attendant with a perfect bun and an even more perfect smile offered her champagne the moment she stepped on board. Aubrey clutched her worn canvas bag tighter, her heartbeat pounding in her ears. She murmured a polite "no, thank you," feeling impossibly out of place. This wasn't her world. Her world was cracked sidewalks, second-hand bookstores, and coffee brewed 3 hours too long. But then she felt it, a hand brushing gently against her back. Logan's hand. His touch was reassuring, grounding her. "You're doing great," he whispered, leaning closer so only she could hear. She looked up at him, at those impossibly blue eyes, and found herself breathing easier. He wasn't laughing at her discomfort. He wasn't showing her off like some trophy. He was proud to have her by his side. It shook something deep inside her. The jet soared into the clouds, and with it, Aubrey's small, familiar world seemed to slip away. Over the next few weeks, Logan invited her into corners of life she'd only ever glimpsed through glossy magazine pages. Glittering galas hosted in rooms bathed in gold light. Dinners in glass towers where the city sprawled beneath them like a dream. Velvet-soaked ballrooms where chandeliers dripped like icicles, and the air smelled of money and ambition. And through it all, he never once treated her like an outsider. Instead, Logan wrapped her in his world with an unspoken tenderness, not forcing her to change, but showing her the beauty he saw in her rawness, her sincerity. At one particularly extravagant gala, as she stood awkwardly by the towering windows, dressed in a silk gown Logan had insisted was just a little something he picked for her, she caught him staring from across the room. Not the way others stared, the curious, judging glances of the rich and polished. Number Logan stared at her like she was art, like she was the only thing in the room that mattered. Aubrey's heart fluttered, heat blooming in her cheeks. She wasn't supposed to feel this way. She wasn't supposed to lose herself in someone so completely. Yet every time Logan smiled at her, listened to her with rapt attention, took her hand and spun her into a dance without warning, she felt herself sinking deeper. But he didn't just parade her through glittering nights. Logan took her to hidden worlds tucked inside the city. Secret libraries nestled between glass giants, walls lined with forgotten treasures. He introduced her to artists who lived on dreams and broke the rules, musicians who played on rooftops until dawn painted the sky, writers who scribbled their souls onto napkins and called it hope. "This," Logan said one night, sitting beside her on the steps of a crumbling old bookstore, lit only by the neon sign buzzing above them. "This is the world that matters. Not the gold, not the penthouses. It's the people who dare to dream." Aubrey turned her face toward him, her heart aching with something tender and terrifying. How could a man so powerful crave something so simple? Was it real? Or was it just another story she would one day shelve away, alongside broken promises and foolish hopes? Logan reached out and tucked a stray lock of hair behind her ear, his fingers lingering just a second too long. "You always look like you're about to run," he murmured, a hint of sadness in his voice. "You don't have to, Aubrey. Not from me." Her throat tightened painfully. "I'm just not used to this," she whispered, voice barely above the city's hum. "It feels too good to be true." He smiled then, slow, heartbreakingly tender. "Maybe you deserve something good for once." Tears prickled at the corners of her eyes and she blinked them away fiercely. She couldn't fall. Not like this. Not without knowing if he would catch her. But the way Logan looked at her, like she was the treasure he'd spent his whole life searching for, made it impossible to hold back. Day after day blurred into a golden haze of stolen moments and whispered secrets. Logan would send her messages in the middle of meetings. Simple things like, "Thinking about you." He'd sneak her out of crowded parties to share greasy burgers on fire escapes, laughing like two kids who had nothing and everything all at once. Aubrey found herself laughing more, daring to hope more. She watched as walls she had spent years building crumbled brick by cautious brick. But still, deep in the corners of her heart, a flicker of fear refused to die. Could she truly trust a man like Logan Whitmore? A man who could command empires with a word, who could have any woman he wanted, who lived in a world where love was too often just another transaction? What if she was just a passing fascination? What if the moment he got tired of slumming it with a bookstore dreamer, he would walk away and she would be left alone again? But worse, because now she wasn't just risking her heart. She was risking the part of her that still believed in magic. As Logan pulled her closer one night under the stars, pressing a kiss to her forehead and whispering something too soft to catch, Aubrey closed her eyes and made a silent promise. She would give him a chance, but she would protect herself. Because if she fell, truly fell, there would be no getting up again. And for the first time in her life, Aubrey Lane realized this wasn't just about love, it was about survival. For a while, Aubrey floated through Logan's world like a dreamer in a fairy tale, hand in hand with a man who made her believe anything was possible. But fairy tales, she soon learned, had shadows too. The first crack appeared innocently enough, a glossy magazine cover at the corner store. Logan Whitmore, billionaire heartbreaker or true love seeker, the headline screamed in bold letters. Aubrey froze mid-step, her coffee sloshing dangerously close to the rim. There, splashed across the cover, were photos of Logan, smiling beside women in glittering gowns, toasting champagne, whispering into perfectly coiffed ears. Her chest tightened. She forced herself to look away. It's the past, she told herself. Everyone has a past. But doubt had already crept in, cold and slow, like winter leaking through a cracked window. It worsened at the charity ball, a glittering event held in the heart of Manhattan's most elite hotel. Logan, devastating in a classic black tuxedo, kept her close all evening, introducing her with pride. Yet everywhere Aubrey turned, she felt the weight of stares, judging, measuring, laughing. While Logan stepped away to greet an investor, Aubrey wandered near the grand staircase, trying to catch her breath. That's when she heard them, a cluster of perfectly polished socialites, their diamond necklaces catching the light, their cruel smiles sharper than their stilettos. "She won't last," one woman giggled, sipping from a flute of champagne. "Logan gets bored easily," another smirked. "Remember Chloe? Jenna? And that actress? What was her name? All flavor of the month. Then, poof, gone." Aubrey's stomach twisted painfully. "I give it a month," a third chimed in, tossing her blonde curls. "Maybe two if she plays naive." Their laughter was like a blade, slicing through her fragile happiness. Aubrey turned away, blinking back tears. She knew better than to let strangers define her. But the truth was, she didn't know Logan's past. Not really. He never spoke about it. And now ugly whispers filled in the gaps she hadn't dared to question. When Logan found her, minutes later, she pasted on a smile she didn't feel. He took her hand without hesitation, pulling her through the crowd toward the open terrace. "You okay?" he asked, voice low, eyes searching her face. The concern was real. She could see it, feel it. And yet, a new voice in her mind whispered, how many women has he looked at like this before? Promised the world to? Forgotten. Aubrey didn't know how to silence that voice. The balcony was bathed in silver moonlight, a soft breeze tugging at her hair. Manhattan glittered below like 1,000 promises waiting to be broken. Logan cupped her face in his hands, his touch achingly tender. You look like you're carrying the weight of the world, he murmured. Aubrey opened her mouth to speak, to confess her fears, but the words lodged in her throat. Instead, she forced a laugh and shook her head. I'm just tired, she lied. Logan smiled, brushing his lips across her forehead. Then let me be your escape. The kiss he pressed to her lips was slow, almost reverent. For a heartbeat, Aubrey let herself believe him, believe in the dream they were spinning together. But even as she melted into his arms, her mind raced with doubts she couldn't chase away. Was she falling for a man who had built his life on moving on? Was she just another chapter in Logan Whitmore's glamorous, hollow story? Or was she something different, something he didn't know how to let go of? Aubrey hated how much she wanted to believe the latter. She hated how much she needed him to prove her wrong. That night, lying in the king-size bed of his penthouse suite, Logan's arm wrapped securely around her waist, Aubrey stared at the ceiling and silently battled the war raging inside her. Hope and fear, dreams and doubts, heart and reason. As Logan whispered sleepily, I don't know what I did before you, Aubrey. She smiled into the darkness. But deep down, she wondered if she was only hearing what she wanted to hear. Because sometimes the heart told beautiful lies, and sometimes those lies hurt more than the truth ever could. Aubrey hadn't been able to shake the weight of the whispers. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the cruel faces of those women at the charity ball, their laughter echoing in her mind. The doubt had burrowed deep into her chest, and for the first time, she felt unsure. Of him, of them, of everything they were building. The next morning, after a sleepless night, Aubrey decided she had to know the truth. No more guessing, no more half-truths. She needed to understand the man she was falling for. The man who had stolen her heart without a second thought. Logan had already left for work when she walked into his penthouse. The space was breathtaking, but today it felt empty, like a stage set for a play that had already ended. She couldn't wait any longer. Picking up her phone, she dialed his number. It rang twice before he answered, his voice a soothing balm to her frayed nerves. Hey, everything okay? He asked, his usual warmth evident even over the phone. I need to talk to you, she said, her voice shaky. Now. There was a brief pause, then a soft sigh. I'll be home soon. The minutes stretched into eternity as she paced the grand living room, her mind swirling with questions. When Logan finally arrived, she was sitting on the couch, her hands clasped tightly in her lap, eyes locked on the door. He looked exhausted, like he hadn't slept much either. His usual polished look was slightly rumpled, but his blue eyes still held that intense magnetic pull. Aubrey stood as he walked in, her heart pounding in her chest. She didn't want to do this. She didn't want to question him, didn't want to risk everything they had built. But she couldn't keep living in the shadow of her doubts. Logan stepped forward, his brow furrowing when he saw the tension in her posture. Aubrey, what's going on? He asked softly. She took a deep breath, her voice trembling as she spoke. I overheard things, Logan. People talking about you, about us, about how I'm just the next flavor of the month. And now I can't stop thinking, am I just another passing phase for you? Another woman you'll forget once you get bored? He froze. The color drained from his face, and for a moment Aubrey thought he might walk away. But instead, he ran a hand through his hair, his eyes filled with something she hadn't seen before. Vulnerability. Raw, painful vulnerability. Aubrey's heart skipped a beat. I know what you're thinking, he said quietly, his voice tight. I've lived my life behind walls, Aubrey. I didn't want to hurt anyone, especially not you. She took a cautious step closer, her voice barely above a whisper. Then tell me the truth. Tell me why I should trust you. Logan's eyes flickered with something deep, something ancient. He stepped back, running a hand over his face before speaking again, his words heavy with regret. I grew up watching my father lose everything. He trusted the wrong people, and it destroyed him. It destroyed our family. I've spent my entire life building my empire, but I've also built these walls around me. I didn't know how to let anyone in, not without the fear of them taking everything I've worked for. Aubrey stood motionless, his words sinking into her soul like a heavy anchor. Logan's eyes locked with hers, the weight of his confession making everything else seem insignificant. You know what I'm most afraid of, he continued, his voice breaking. I'm afraid of giving my heart to someone and watching it fall apart. I'm afraid of not being enough for you, of losing you the way I've lost so many things in my life. The tears that had been threatening to spill finally fell, and Aubrey wiped them away quickly, not wanting him to see her break. She knew that feeling, the terror of losing someone before you even had them. Logan stepped closer, his voice soft but firm. I'm offering you a choice, Aubrey. You can leave now. Walk away before things get any more complicated, or you can stay and we fight for something real. Something that scares me to my core, but something that I want with you. But you have to decide now, because I won't be able to keep my distance much longer. Her breath caught in her throat. The choice was so simple, yet so impossibly difficult. It was everything she had ever wanted, but it was also everything she feared. To love Logan was to risk everything, to trust someone who had been burned too many times. But as she looked into his eyes, she realized she couldn't walk away. She couldn't turn her back on him when the possibility of something real, something beautiful, was within reach. I'm scared, she whispered, the words trembling on her lips. Me too, Logan admitted, his voice thick with emotion. But we can be scared together. If you stay, I promise I won't let you go. I promise I'll fight for you, Aubrey. She didn't hesitate. I'm staying, she said, her voice steady despite the storm raging inside her. I trust you, Logan. I trust us. Logan's eyes softened, and for the first time in weeks, Aubrey saw a glimpse of the man she had been falling for. Not the billionaire, not the powerful businessman, but the man who had been hiding behind his own walls, too afraid to truly live. He reached out, cupping her face in his hands. Thank you, he whispered, his voice thick with gratitude. I'll make it worth it, I swear. And in that moment, Aubrey knew, without a doubt, that she had made the right choice. The future was uncertain, yes, but it was hers to shape. Together, they would face whatever came next. And maybe, just maybe, they could finally build something real. Aubrey had just begun to believe in the possibility of something real. She and Logan had navigated the storm of their past, built trust from shattered pieces, and found solace in each other's arms. The idea of a future together didn't seem so far-fetched anymore. For the first time in weeks, she allowed herself to relax, to let go of the constant wariness that had gripped her heart. But as she opened her phone one evening, everything she thought she knew came crashing down. It was an innocuous text at first, from a friend she hadn't spoken to in years. But when the message opened, her breath caught in her throat. I'm so sorry, Aubrey. I didn't mean for you to find out this way. I thought you should know. Someone ran a background check on you. You should probably ask Logan about it. Her heart stopped. A background check? On her? The words echoed in her mind, each syllable sending a cold shiver down her spine. She tried to shake it off, but a gnawing unease twisted in her gut. Aubrey had never been the type to snoop, never the kind of person to look for something that might not be there. But tonight, the curiosity was too powerful to ignore. Her fingers moved before she could stop them, tapping out a quick message to Charlotte, Logan's ever-efficient assistant. Did you run a background check on me? The words felt like acid as they left her fingertips. The reply came almost instantly, as if Charlotte had been waiting for the question. I'm sorry, Aubrey. Logan insisted we check everyone he gets involved with. It was nothing personal. Please don't be upset. Nothing personal. The words hung in the air like a foul stench. Aubrey's vision blurred as the betrayal began to settle in her chest, hot and suffocating. Logan had asked for it. Logan had doubted her from the beginning. She dropped her phone onto the couch, her hands trembling. The images of the last few weeks, the late-night conversations, the quiet moments where Logan had made her feel like she was the only woman in the world, seemed so far away now, like they had never existed. Before she could gather her thoughts, the door opened and Logan walked in. The warmth in his smile faltered when he saw the look on her face. He froze, instantly aware that something was wrong. "Aubrey?" he asked, his voice tentative. "What's going on?" Her heart raced and every nerve in her body screamed for her to stay calm, to not let the anger consume her. But it was too late. The dam had broken. She stood up and faced him, her voice shaking with a mix of pain and betrayal. "Did you really think I wouldn't find out?" she demanded, her voice louder than she intended. "Did you really think I wouldn't notice that you've been digging into my past, my family, my finances, like I'm some charity case?" Logan's face drained of color, his expression faltering as if the breath had been knocked out of him. His blue eyes widened in disbelief. "Aubrey, No," she interrupted, shaking her head, her heart pounding in her chest. "Don't try to justify this. Don't tell me this was just part of your routine to protect your empire. I'm not one of your business deals." Tears stung her eyes and she wiped them away quickly, refusing to let him see her break. The weight of the betrayal was too much to bear. "I thought you cared about me. I thought we were building something together. But clearly I was just another project to you." Logan's hands dropped to his sides, his face crumpling with guilt. "Aubrey, please, listen to me. It wasn't supposed to be like this. I asked Charlotte to run the check before our first date. I wanted to be sure you weren't after something. The world I live in, people want something from me. It's hard to trust anyone." His voice cracked, and he took a hesitant step toward her. "But the moment I met you, everything changed. I called it off. I never meant for you to find out." The confession hung in the air like a heavy fog, suffocating her. She shook her head, her chest tight with the pain of his words. "You never trusted me, Logan. You never believed I could just love you for you." Logan's gaze softened with regret, but it was too little, too late. The trust she had given him, piece by fragile piece, had shattered in an instant. The bond they had built was now a pile of broken glass, impossible to mend without cutting themselves in the process. "I'm sorry," Logan whispered, his voice full of sorrow. "I never wanted to hurt you." Aubrey took a step back, feeling the ground beneath her feet begin to crumble. She couldn't look at him anymore. His apologies felt hollow, his regret a distant echo. She wanted to believe him. She really did. But how could she, when he had started their relationship with deceit? With a painful ache in her chest, she turned away, her heart screaming for something more, something real. But the trust was gone, slipping through her fingers like sand. "I can't do this," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I can't keep pretending that everything is okay when it's not. I'm not some part of your world that you can control, Logan. I'm not your project." Aubrey wiped her face, her hands trembling as she grabbed her purse. "I'm leaving." Logan reached for her, his hand outstretched, but she stepped back, the tears streaming down her face now impossible to hide. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice barely audible. "I have to go." The sound of the door closing behind her echoed through the empty apartment, and Logan stood there frozen. His world had just crumbled, but for Aubrey, the damage was already done. Trust, once broken, was impossible to repair. Weeks passed, and each day felt like a lifetime. Aubrey buried herself in work, trying to keep her mind occupied, but every corner of her apartment, every corner of her life, felt empty without Logan. The ache in her chest never went away, but she refused to let herself dwell on it. She couldn't afford to be weak again, not after everything. She had convinced herself that moving on was the right thing to do, that life could go on without Logan. But the truth was, her heart still ached for him. Her nights were restless, her thoughts haunted by memories of their time together. She couldn't stop wondering if she'd made a mistake, walking away from him. Meanwhile, Logan was tormented by his own guilt, his own regret. He couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. The emptiness he felt without Aubrey was unbearable. He knew that losing her was a mistake he couldn't live with. He didn't care about his wealth, his empire, or his reputation anymore. They had all been meaningless without her. The thought of losing her for good was more than he could bear. Logan made a decision. He would fight for her. No more games. No more running from the truth. He knew it was a long shot, but if there was a chance she would give him another shot, he had to take it. One rainy evening, Aubrey came home, exhausted from a long day of work, only to stop dead in her tracks as she opened the door. Her apartment, once cold and empty, was now alive with memories. Every surface was covered in handwritten notes, tucked into books, taped to mirrors, and scattered across the floor like fallen petals. She stepped inside, her eyes wide, heart racing, as she began to read the notes, each one a small piece of Logan's soul. There were notes about their first meeting, about the night they laughed together over coffee, the moments they had shared that made her feel truly seen for the first time. Each note was a confession, a dream, a love letter she never expected to find in her own home. And in the center of it all stood Logan, drenched from the rain, his face pale, his expression vulnerable. He held a small velvet box in his trembling hand. He had no more walls, no more shields, just his heart laid bare. "Aubrey!" His voice cracked as he dropped to one knee, his words barely audible over the sound of the rain tapping against the window. "Trusting you was the only good decision I've ever made. I know I've hurt you. I know I've made mistakes. But I love you. I've loved you from the moment we met, and I'm asking you, will you trust me enough to be my forever?" Aubrey's breath caught in her throat, her mind reeling. She wanted to scream, to run, to push him away. But the raw honesty in his eyes, the depth of emotion in his voice, stopped her. The pain she had carried for so long suddenly felt insignificant, fading away under the weight of his words. Logan's voice was soft but urgent, his eyes searching hers. "I know I don't deserve you, but I swear to you, I would give up everything to make things right. I've never been more certain of anything in my life. Will you give me the chance to show you I can be the man you deserve?" Aubrey felt the walls she had built around her heart begin to crumble. The love she thought she had buried, the trust she thought was lost, surged back to the surface. Her pulse raced as she took a tentative step forward, the rain-soaked air between them thick with emotion. She met his gaze, her voice barely a whisper. "Logan, I don't know if I can trust you again." His eyes dimmed with regret, but he didn't hesitate. "I'll spend every day proving I'm worth it, Aubrey. I'll spend every day showing you that I'm not the man who hurt you. Please, just give me a chance." Her heart thudded in her chest, the weight of the moment pressing down on her. She had to choose, to forgive or to walk away. The future felt uncertain, but in this moment, with the rain falling and the room filled with memories of their love, Aubrey realized that sometimes the hardest choice was the one that led to something beautiful. She took a deep breath, her voice breaking as she spoke. "Yes, Logan. Yes, I'll trust you. I'll trust you with my heart again." Aubrey knelt down and took his hand, feeling the weight of the small velvet box in his palm. The future was uncertain, but in that moment, everything seemed possible. Logan's eyes lit up with hope, and he smiled, pulling her into a gentle embrace. The rain outside seemed to soften, the world falling away as they stood there, holding on to each other. For the first time in weeks, Aubrey felt the warmth of possibility fill her heart again. Aubrey's heart raced as she ran into Logan's arms, the world around them fading into nothingness. His warmth enveloped her, and she whispered yes over and over, as if the very sound of it could heal all the wounds they had both carried. In that moment, their past struggles, fears, and doubts vanished, leaving only the unspoken promise of something real, something worth fighting for. They didn't have a perfect love. It was messy, imperfect, filled with moments of doubt and pain. But it was theirs, real, true, the kind of love that didn't need perfection to be beautiful. They had survived every storm, learned to trust when it seemed impossible, and now, as they stood there in each other's arms, nothing else mattered. Months later, Aubrey stood beside Logan on a quiet beach, the sky painted in soft shades of pink and gold as the sun began to set. The sound of the waves crashing against the shore felt like a lullaby, reminding them that love, like the ocean, had its own rhythm. Surrounded by the people who mattered, they promised forever, not in a grand fairy tale way, but in the simple truth of what they had built. Aubrey realized it wasn't wealth, glamour, or fairy tales that had changed her life. It was the courage to trust, to love without fear, to believe in the beauty of imperfections. And as they exchanged vows beneath the blush-colored sky, Aubrey knew this was a love that would last, not because it was flawless, but because it was real.